This, a secret war raging in the shadows of global finance, pitting the U.S. Treasury against the Federal Reserve in a brutal fight for control of the dollar itself. And right in the center, Bitcoin and MicroStrategy, under fire from JP Morgan's desperate strikes to cling to power, taking shots at two key players. All while Tether quietly fuels a push for Scott Bessent's Bretton Woods 2.0. A bombshell article from Marilyn Huddle just exposed it all. The evidence, the players, the high-stakes moves that could reshape a 100-year-old monetary system. But who's winning, and what does it mean for Bitcoin's future? Stick around. We're diving deep into the battlefield and what it means for you. I am Nathan with the BTC Sessions, and this is your weekly session. All right, let me go ahead and pull in my co-host with the most, Mr. Gary Mahmood. Gary, my friend, how are you doing today?
Very well, Nathan. You talk words so good.
Thanks, pal. I really appreciate that. We got a ton to cover today. There's a bunch of economic news as well as this amazing article from Marilyn Huddle and kind of the evidence that goes to support it. So let's immediately kick it into high gear here. Let's see if we can pull that up.
You opted out of the broken financial system by adopting Bitcoin and taking self-custody of your money. But protecting your wealth is only part of the equation. Now it's time to protect your freedom. My family is stacking sats and stacking flags. A second passport is our hedge against government overreach and uncertainty. If you're a Bitcoiner looking for your exit strategy, our friends at Citizen X will help you secure second citizenship through investment or descent. Book your free call today by hitting the link in the show notes or simply scanning the QR code on the screen. Let me break this down for my fellow Bitcoiners. In just 8 weeks, I've seen a serious shift. More strength, more energy, and fast muscle gains. The reason? FITSCRIPT. They ran 124 biomarkers, blood, hormones, inflammation, and built a fully custom plan, nutrition, training, supplements. No guesswork, no templates. This is functional medicine meets precision fitness for high-performing men who want sovereignty over their health. If you care about optimization the way you care about your money, test, don't guess. Don't trust, verify. Hit the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to check out FITSCRIPT and see what's possible.
So if you haven't checked that already, it's absolutely worth a read. Marilyn Huddle basically goes through and outlines how there's kind of these two camps fighting for control over the dollar system right now. We have kind of the Treasury with MicroStrategy and Bitcoin and Tether on one side looking to do a new system. And then we have the existing system, JP Morgan, the Fed, Wall Street, all those guys on the other. And he lays it out beautifully. So let's take a look at some of the evidence of what we're seeing there. First and foremost, I wanted to show you this, just to remind you, just to kind of like illustrate, because Gary, you're always skeptical, as you should be, of where we currently are and evidence that we have to support this. So I want to play this for you here quick too. This is a Scott Bessent speaking about this idea of the existing system changing and where we need to go.
Of the Bretton Woods institutions. Yet everywhere we look across the international system today, we see imbalance. The good news, it doesn't have to be this way. My goal this morning is to outline a blueprint to restore equilibrium to the global financial system and the institutions designed to uphold it.
Catch that, Gary. A blueprint. He's got a blueprint. He's got a plan. We all know that people are acting on their own incentives, but I think there are some games afoot. Additionally, a little bit older, we had this one as well. This was from Real Clear Politics. It was a podcast a little while ago where Scott outlines that he would like to either directly or from the outside be involved in a Bretton Woods 2.0.
I also felt very strongly that we're in the midst of a great realignment, kind of a Bretton Woods realignment coming in terms of global policy, global trade. There's a lot of what I taught at Yale. I've been studying my whole life. I'd like to be part of it, either on the inside or the out.
So we know that they're aware of the cracks in the existing system. There's a lot of evidence to kind of back that up as well, too. And for anyone that's not really familiar, like for me personally, I thought like a CBDC, the likelihood was a lot less than people gave it credit because having the Federal Reserve issue a token or the Treasury basically takes away all the power from the current commercial banking system because they're the ones that get to issue the broader money by the creation of debt. So it kind of completely cut out the middleman. And that seems to be kind of the war that's going on, that the Treasury, at least the arguments being made, that the Treasury is trying to take control of the monetary system, have it backed by gold, Bitcoin, treasuries, and running on stable coins versus the existing system that is, again, not doing so great. Additionally, I think, Gary, you saw today that there was another article from Marilyn Hodl kind of talking about the reasons why this might be beneficial for the US and the dollar and why the Treasury might be pursuing this kind of path. Can you give us a quick overview of that?
Yeah, they go into a little bit. They're talking about how you basically have the dollar maintain its liquidity around the world, and you'd have Bitcoin backing it, and you'd issue these bit bonds, this innovation, according to them, which would allow us to transition to a Bitcoin-backed monetary system globally, done over the course of maybe a century instead of over like 2 or 3 years, with, I assume, mass fires and chaos and dogs and cats living together. So it would allow the dollar to still be the your standard issue that goes back and forth for buying and selling. It's the I'm drawing a blank here, buddy. I can't think of the word, but we're pricing everything still in dollars.
Yeah, medium of exchange, unit of account.
Unit of account. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, sorry, I had a brain fart there. But yeah, it'd be backed by Bitcoin ultimately, and that's the idea. And supposedly it solves Triffin's dilemma, allowing business and industry to return to America. I'm still trying to grok that, but that could just be my own stupidity, and I'm gonna work on it. Brain function slow.
Even like, I'm not saying this is from a an altruistic perspective. Like, even in the sense, these people all have their own incentives. Like, to be like Scott Bessent and be then the one creating and issuing USD, as well as to be the kind of the legacy of being the man that transitioned to a new system. That all lines up for me perfectly. It's not out of the goodness of their heart, but essentially, like, control of the money was ripped away from the American people to a cabal of shadowy banks back in 1913.
Cabal is the word.
Yeah, exactly. So it almost seems like we have a battle between the government and the banking system, and Bitcoin is just the field at which it's being played on. And I don't think either one is necessarily acting outside of their own interest. They're just trying to seize control, and the old system's trying to hang on to, which makes perfect sense to me. Now, outlining a little bit of like, what do we have from Team Treasury going on at the moment? So we can see that like the Treasury and stablecoins go hand in hand in terms of buyers and then creating, again, those new currency units. So stablecoin rules force 109 billion in Treasury purchases over the last 4 months. And this was just from a couple days ago here. So again, we saw like foreign demand for Treasuries are coming down, like who's going to buy the US debt, and like really Tether and the stablecoins have been the biggest purchaser, particularly of short-term debt, which from a business standpoint is absolutely brilliant in the sense that they take your money and they buy treasuries and they collect the interest and they give you a casino token. I think there's like, I remember hearing like there's like 10 to 15 people at Tether. It's a like $50 billion company. Like, it's absolutely, it's a genius move. It's an evil genius move, perhaps in some respects, but it's a genius move for a business. And so they're going hand in hand, right? They're necessary. And I believe this is all codified in the Genius Act as well, that they basically had to be buying like dollar equivalents or buying treasuries. Yeah. So that's where the force of the 109 billion is coming from. But you got those two working together to create a different kind of USD currency floating out there that's buying up the treasury demand. I also had this one as well that you pointed out to me. Gary, maybe you can tell me a little bit about here what we got going on from Congressman Warren Davidson.
Yeah, so this congressman introduced a bill that basically said you can pay your federal taxes in Bitcoin without having to cash the Bitcoin out. You can pay it directly to the government, and in doing so, you don't have to cash it out, and you don't have to pay a capital gains tax. Now, again, individual congressmen work in their own incentives and self-interest, and his self-interest is getting reelected in 2 years. So I'm not trying to read more into it than we necessarily need to. But if somebody really wants to spin this in a positive Bitcoin way, you could say, hey, look, the federal government is willing to take your money in Bitcoin, even at a 20 to 30% loss of not getting the short or long-term capital gains tax, because for them in longer term, Bitcoin's going to be more valuable. Again, this is issued by a single congressman. I'm not trying to assign a level of mental planning to an entire unit that is the state, but you could argue it that way if you want.
Absolutely. And to the point, and to the original article from Marilyn Hodl as well, too, it outlines that the Treasury, that the U.S. government would be acquiring Bitcoin, trying to do it quietly as well, too, at least initially, in order to execute on this plan. Bitcoin being one of the collaterals and one of the reserves that it has on hand, which even from our recent conversation, our podcast this week with Dr. Cruz that just dropped as well, he hints at there might be some that, Sailor and Strategy might not be what we think. But what an easy way for them to essentially get a hold of Bitcoin is just for the government to assume control or purchase MicroStrategy shares at some point in time. That he could be acting as a secret, quiet accumulation, which might explain some of the other moves that we're going to see here in a second. So more evidence to support this idea that we have the government trying to strengthen their position by acquiring Bitcoin. This would be a way to do it. Again,
may I just personal note? If the federal government thinks I'm giving them any of my Bitcoin, they can go fuck themselves. So continue.
Bitcoin. That's not gonna happen. No way. I'm with you on that one too. They keep doing it by like seizure, which is terrible as well too. You should give it back to its rightful owners. But again, I don't think they're necessarily acting on altruistic reasons here. I think it's purely out of self-interest. And just like we need Bitcoin to protect ourselves, they need it to protect themselves from the crumbling system as well there too. Furthermore, just on that note here, we had from Pierre Richard on November 20th, the state of Texas acquired 10 million of Bitcoin for its strategic reserve. We're going to see more of this. And again, it's kind of like gone out of favor. And I totally get it because we saw these kind of news articles all the time about states getting into Bitcoin, governments getting into Bitcoin. I think I saw another one from Bhutan this week. I didn't even include it necessarily in the show, but it makes perfect sense. Like the wheels are starting to come off, and we know that at some point in time it's going to accelerate. It's never going to be a linear progression. And I think that what Marilyn's outlining is basically an idea that we can slow the process down, and here's how we can do it for more of a, we'll say, soft transition versus just the outright Weimar scenario. But if this is the case, we're going to look to see more evidence of the Treasury involvement in stablecoins, Bitcoin backing, and basically the commercial banking system and the Fed not being so happy about it. So again, Texas, 10 million. It's not a lot for them, but it's infinitely more than zero. And I think that's the major point. Plus Pierre is great. So I'd love to include him there as well. All right, the other one, and we've seen this going back and forth. Now, Gary, you and I were talking about this, even just brainstorming before the show, that like you were asking, like, what's Trump's incentive? And I said, don't forget, like it's not outside the realm of possibility for him. You've had such a clash between like Trump and Powell, at least publicly, at least what it appears to be. I don't put it past them to basically have the little bit of the ego incentive, to the sense that like, oh, you're going to great things, you're going to make things hard for me. I'm going to take control away from you. So Powell is out in May, I think May 26th. We have from Joe Consorti here, former Coinbase advisor is the front runner for the next Fed chair, and you're bearish. Kevin Hassett seen as the front runner in Trump's Fed chair search, which was, again, former advisor to Coinbase. So they're almost taking their, I hate to say it, but like their crypto guy, but Bitcoin at least, and shoving him into that leading role at the Fed. Not only we're getting basically the doves in control come spring, but then we're also getting someone that is very favorable assuming the helm. Gary, any thoughts on this, what we talked about so far, my friend?
I mean, I don't buy it, Nathan. Trump is a level-headed, wise man with no ego, so I don't see why he would do this for ego at all.
I think you bring up a very interesting point. The man does not care about legacy or how he's viewed publicly at all.
Not at all.
That could never motivate him. He would never be out for vengeance against somebody who made him look bad. That's impossible. So with that, we kind of outlined a little bit of what Team Treasury is doing here. But how is the Fed and how is the commercial banking system? And don't forget that I think JP Morgan is like the controlling interest of the Fed as well too. It's privately owned. It's such a weird, obtuse is the right word? System, in the sense that they give it the illusion of being a government agency, the Federal Reserve, but it is a privately owned banking institution that is run by the largest banking players, with JP Morgan, I'm pretty sure, at the helm. And plus, if you want to dive into the history of JP Morgan and Rockefellers and Rothschilds, like, yeah, he probably would design a system that would keep him in power and have the most influence. So with that, how are they fighting back? Who are they attacking? What have they done? From Bitcoin Therapist, we got a nice post here. So JP Morgan sells shares of MSTR, increases margin requirements from 50% to 95%, pushes for strategy exclusion from MSCI indices, has a history of manipulating the Bitcoin price, calls for lower prices, waits for 35% drawdown, and announces a Bitcoin-backed bond. Is this just a coincidence? Gary, you look shocked. You looked absolutely shocked.
Again, I'm the skeptic in the room, so I try not to attribute to grand mustache-twitching conspiracies what could just be a coincidence. But this seems there's kind of a lot of evidence here that, like, all right, these guys are smart. They're a lot smarter than I am. They know when to time things. All right, whatever.
100%, dude. Like they've pushed around. They've got caught so many times for like insider dealings as well as kind of market manipulation. That's why they're like that was the justification for the regulators and stuff in the first place. I'm sure they've been playing with the gold price for a long time. So I'm sure they play around with a lot of prices all the time too. To think that they wouldn't try to manipulate MicroStrategy or Bitcoin for their own advantage, either accumulation or disempowering it from the Treasury, like 100%. Big banks are gonna big bank.
Yeah.
They're going to just try to profit and not give a shit about how it actually, any sort of moral or ethical dilemmas. Those values, Gary, those are for Bitcoiners, right? Those aren't for bankers. That's a wholly different realm. Thoughts?
It's fiat values, definitely.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
But also, I'd like to sit here and say I'm an ethical Bitcoiner. I would never do. No, but it's still, I try not to. But I'm ultimately like a fucking human being, and yeah, I will sometimes compromise my personal views if like, oh, I'm getting paid a lot of money. Yeah, all right. I do have a line. Like there are certain things I will not cross. But, you know, I'm an actor part-time. I'll shill for products necessarily in commercials that I don't use. Like, okay, sure, I'll do that because I'm a human being. It happens. Yeah. So these guys, human beings with a fuck ton of money. What do you think they're going to do?
100%. 100%. If you haven't checked it out, there is an ad of Gary out there that you should go and find. There's a couple of them, actually, to be honest. So continuing on, we got why strategy MSTR is down 8.4% after MSCI considers index removal over Bitcoin exposure and what's next. So this will be related to the passive flows. And just to kind of illustrate the point that we're making here is that MicroStrategy not only could be a accumulation for the US government if they just assume control or buy controlling interest of it at some point in time, or even just some shares in it. But additionally, it's kind of that bridge between the existing financial world and the Bitcoin world. And for a lot of people, for a lot of large institutions, it was their way to kind of get across if they couldn't have direct exposure. Or they wanted more of like a high beta play because essentially they're just issuing fiat debt and then buying more Bitcoin with this. And I think that's what's being attacked here is that JP Morgan, that side of the camp, if this theory holds up, is going after the bridge between the two systems that helps make the transition, which is why they're specifically targeting MicroStrategy because it is top dog, no doubt about it, and trying to basically take it down or suppress it. So we got big drop in MicroStrategy. Additionally, we had that looks like JP Morgan has an alleged short on MSTR as well, which I did see some of this that like, again, it'd be lots of fun to have another kind of GME moment. It would be definitely entertaining, but there was speculation going around that a 50% price jump in MicroStrategy could basically devastate or decimate JP Morgan. I'm not sure if they, again, this is going into like financial engineering beyond my scope. I'm not sure if they got like naked shorts or what's happening here. I'm sure they've hedged it. They can also just, I'm sure there's enough of a, what do you say, honor amongst thieves to get support from the other banks as well too to cover their positions. I don't think they'd get taken out, but man, I'd love to see them go to the wood chipper for a little bit and take a couple hits. So
yeah, I think you're 100% right. Like they would never get taken out because the U.S. taxpayer would ultimately bail them out,
or the Fed,
which is ultimately still the U.S. taxpayer.
Yep.
Or just people who use dollars all around the world as their money gets inflated away. So it's not just the U.S. taxpayer. So no, they're not going to go away. But yeah, take it to the woodshed for a bit. You know, get some people fired. Yeah, that could happen, I suppose.
Hey, you. Yes, you watching the Bitcoin price movements and the latest exciting news. It's awesome to stay informed, but the real power of Bitcoin comes from taking control. Don't just watch, take action. Head over to btcsessions.ca/learn for free step-by-step tutorials that guide you through every major skill you need to know, plus full video playlists for deeper dives on any topic you like. And if you're ready for the ultimate fast track, scroll to the bottom and check out bitcoinmentor.io for premium one-on-one experience with my team of Bitcoin experts to ensure you get it right the first time. Don't wait. Secure your Bitcoin future today. Hit the link in the show notes or scan the QR code on the screen.